Hey, you! You want a better body in 15 days? You want a dream job making millions from working at home? You want to get rid of unsightly skin tags? Then listen up. This is Destroy All Clickbait, the podcast with 12 active ingredients to clear your thinking, enhance your brain power, and purify your ideology. Our active ingredients are Ing, Avi, and me. I'm Adam. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm an additive.
That's
yes,
awful.
It's full of ingredients. When I was young, we
Totally not 90% filler.
It will not give you rashes. I repeat, will not give you rashes.
It's not a huge
or cause blindness.
Legionnaire's disease-free since 2017. Anyway,
now with now with no razor blades, and then just the disclaimer going at the bottom that we know of.
Well, back to the
Happy Tweets Giving.
Yes. Happy
indeed.
Due to happenstance, you weren't here when we discussed this, but Alfie and I decided that it will now be the tradition, and this is our first annual Tweets Giving special, where for Thanksgiving we'll try to get all our clickbait from the Twitter.
Okay.
Well, truth be told, we seem to get a lot of our clickbait from the Twitter.
And this is because all of our clickbait this week is from the Twitter.
Yes.
It's all from the
and
Twitter.
Because we can then do a sort of portmanteau with Thanksgiving and tweeting.
Fair enough.
Indeed, although this is American Thanksgiving, not Canadian Thanksgiving.
I'm just going to continue to explain the joke until somebody puts me out of my mercy and stops me, please.
Look over there.
Okay.
Look over there,
George. Let's start with.
Let's start with. I
Tell me about the top 10 rabbits again.
Just look at this one weird trick, George. One weird trick.
And it's good. It's a beautiful place. And English professors hate him.
No, I want to look at the most recent, the last one that Avi provided here. The video.
Okay, so the Bitcoin one.
The Bitcoin video. Okay, so this is...
It's for the viewers at home, or the listeners at home, it's basically a short, less than a minute clip of a video that's a parody of the Friday song, if you remember that from years ago at this point.
Mm-hmm. Timely.
Except it's based on the idea that, hey, you can't go shopping with Bitcoin, so you should totally get this credit card called BitPay. So you can use your Bitcoin for your after Thanksgiving shopping, because that makes sense.
We are not a pyramid scheme. I repeat, not a pyramid scheme.
Totally not a pyramid
I gotta say
scheme,
that,
guys.
If any video just needed to flash the words completely legitimate at the end, it is this one.
It would be this one. Yeah, and they got some girl to sing, and they threw some auto-tune over it, and they have a bunch of other people lip-syncing to it.
So much auto-tune on this video. It's
like the entire thing is auto-tuned, like obviously auto-tuned.
And it's like, and the hilarious part is I don't know if there are any actual notes in the song. It's a droning, repetitive chant, even with the auto-tune.
Well, that's what Friday was. If you've ever listened to the original Friday song, that's what Friday was. So it sounds like Friday. The song.
I'm putting up in the Twitch and now in the thing. I'm going to put I found the link to the entire video on YouTube.
Okay.
So
I don't think I need to watch the entire video.
No, well, just watch the first few seconds of the actual video, because that's pretty amazing, and I can't believe they cut that part out.
The hell? Why do they have that?
Yeah! It's this.
Why do they have that?
I want a link to the screaming cowboy at this point.
Oh great! I missed the best part.
It's only like maybe 20 seconds long. But, like, why? Why?
Well, because of BitPay.
So, okay, as near as I can tell what this card is that basically, and this is actually making me severely regret and consider changing how I do my debit cards. Visa has a prepaid debit card system with them, which as near as I can tell is a way to cash out bitcoins and basically buy a prepaid debit card with it so you can use it like it's real money.
Oh, God.
Of course, you may be saying, well, why would I buy Bitcoin then? Why would I not just, use my regular money that, say, I already use a debit card to transfer and just do that directly? And that's a good question.
Because that would make you a fiat loser, according to the video.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because apparently that's a thing.
They're going to shame you into
using... Okay, many things about Bitcoin I hate. That one is the most because it is literally the most fiat currency ever conceived.
Okay.
It's not based on the gross economy of any nation or backed up by the promise or securance of any banks. It's not based on the values of limited resources. It's literally the decision that, well, we made it so the computer says it's worth this much, and it is because it's worth that much.
Yeah.
And then you can build a computer that literally farms it, and then it'll be worth more.
Yeah. Well, I believe and believe me, I'm not trying to pretend I understand Bitcoin, but I believe the rationale in that case is that because you earn other currency represents a use of resources, so Bitcoin has to represent a use of resources. So in this case, it has to use up computer time, which is, quote, mining the coin, in the same way that you would mine the metals to make real currency. And the mere fact, like, it's just kind of it's sympathetic magic almost, like, if we do that. And then, of course, that's created a problem where it has to keep escalating, just as capitalism does. You have to keep...
Well, okay, so I'm going to really simplify it.
Okay.
That's fine.
This is not actually how the blockchain works. Do not at me. But for the sake of understanding how the mining works, you know what a prime number is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that is the number that's divisible only by itself in 1. So, imagine that you're getting a computer, and, like, the first ones to mine the Bitcoin are running an algorithm that is to calculate prime numbers.
Okay.
But it's also exclusive, so, once somebody calculates that prime number, nobody else can get it. That bit is already mined.
Okay.
The first ones are, of course, easy to calculate. And then, once all the readily exploitable ones there, then it starts to take processing power to calculate higher and higher numerical prime numbers. The Bitcoin algorithm is more complicated than that, but it's the same in principle, and if anything, probably stupider and more arbitrary.
In all likelihood,
it's claiming a point. Now, see, my understanding is that there are a few other of the cryptocurrencies who acknowledge this, and they're trying to, like, make themselves based on the computers doing something actually useful. Like, it, solves, I don't know, I can't even remember. But they've, like, it decrypts something, and then for every decryption, that is worth a Bitcoin, or whatever the coin is called. It's still kind of dumb, but it's at least,
Well, for a while, there was also a parody one called Dogecoin.
Yeah,
that calculated its value based on the number of Doge memes that its program could detect on the internet.
Oh, God!
I didn't know that was the actual basis of
yes,
it,
this was a parody of Bitcoin, and for a while, of course, the joke was that it was worth more and more stable than Bitcoin.
Yes.
Oh, yeah!
Which, of course, it fell out of favor since nobody actually trusts Dogecoin, and honestly, nobody should trust Bitcoin either, because it's a currency that was crashed by Magic the Gathering.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, my favorite thing about Bitcoin was a few months back they had a big Bitcoin a big Bitcoin convention, and it turned out none of the related vendors took Bitcoin for the Bitcoin-related convention.
Yeah.
Of course not. Because that would make it easy.
It's sort of like the observation that you never see a tobacco executive smoke.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And the NRA is a gun-free zone.
Yeah.
The actual NRA offices, same thing. Yeah, they're peddling something equally well. And I mean, there was that article a few months ago too about apparently the processing power of that's required for Bitcoin has gotten so huge that, like, within a year or two, we're going to be using all of the Earth's computing power just for Bitcoin if it keeps escalating.
It keeps it actually uses more resources than like all of the other actual physical mining.
Right. Because here's the thing
that we've done combined.
Right, because computational power isn't just fucking magic, it actually runs off electricity, which is generated typically via turning turbines to induce electrical charge, which is often done by burning a fossil fuel, or hydroelectrical...
Right.
Or air, or... solar or whatever. Oh, I forgot to say the one thing with the BitChain thing there, is that as it gets harder to get the Bitcoin, thus... supposedly the resource gets more valuable because there'll be less of it.
Of course. Right. Of course.
Or less readily available. It's still stupid.
Yeah, no, I remember there was a thing on Twitter about going back like 10 years and what would you tell yourself from 10 years ago, and basically somebody was like, I would tell them to get into Bitcoin and then cash out in like 2012 or something to that effect. Like, cash out early so that way you don't have to deal with this shit.
But of course that's the thing, everyone is trying to do that everyone knows that, you got to cash out at a key point, but you have to encourage everyone else to stay in, and it becomes a cult basically.
But here's also the thing, the act of cashing out will also crash it.
But the video is pretty incredible. Like I say, the fact that it is a parody of Friday that was done in just the last few days, by the way. This is not like a video from 2000. This isn't from 2015. This is from like November 17th, 2018, apparently. And again, like the people in the comments are like, I think they're Bitcoin defenders, and they're still going, this is the most cringeworthy thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, no, whenever there's anything related to Bitcoin, there's always people defending it. Always people defending it.
No, but I mean, even the people who defend Bitcoin as a concept are laughing at the video.
Oh,
reminds me...
Well, no, that's because this is a horrible
I'm sorry,
video.
I wish I could remember who it was, but somebody saw on Twitter made the joke is like, oh no, I'm drowning, and there's no one around to help me. Bitcoin is an inherently flawed system, so that thousands of people will come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just, it really does have that, it's got that cultish thing where it's like, we'll repeat our things that people need to hear. Fiat currency is for losers is a comment, like, and that appears 2 or 3 times throughout the video. BitPay.
Oh my God.
The bear run. I don't know what the bear run is. It's
bear and bull market.
Right. Well, okay. I mean,
I literally don't care enough to actually find out why that is. I'm just presuming it's stupid. Basic...
Well, I think...
Like, one of the critic explanations for Bitcoin is, what is Bitcoin? Well, a computer does math, so now I can buy child porn. Or now I can buy drugs.
Yeah.
Because, yes, it got popular for buying some black market things on the internet.
Right.
Because...
And Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. Because it's supposedly... Because it advertised itself as untraceable. It is.
Oh.
That's the thing. I assure you, it is.
Oh my God.
Or, as I've said it, because of how much resources it's now using, to where, like, Bitcoin mining factories are severe pollution generators.
Right.
It's now the equivalent of burning crops to earn pictures of food.
Right.
Jesus. I'm so glad my brother didn't take an old CPU we had and tried to turn it into a Bitcoin mining computer. He almost did.
Well, one of the frustrating
He
things is that it's also driven up computer part prices.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like
damn
graphic
it.
cards and RAM, which previously was very cheap, are now really expensive,
Right.
including a lot of the graphics cards and shit for like gaming rigs. Are now being priced
would
out.
you need a-
Are now pricing out people because
Why do you need a graphics card to mine mass?
Because the
I
more-
don't know.
Well, the more CPUs you have clucking along, the better your chances of getting some of the Bitcoin is. So they're just
but a graphics card isn't your CPU. It just determines how well your computer can process the actual graphics.
I don't know, but
If all
something
you're
with it
doing-
is apparently popular to be repurposed for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is sort of the thing that this is such an amazingly stupid thing, but the technology behind it is complex enough so that it's like you literally had to apply a lot of technical intelligence to figure out a way to be this incredibly stupid.
Reminds me of what Ebert said about a movie. I think it was Death to Smoochie, or is it took talented people to make a movie this bad?
Yes.
Probably.
Untalented people could not make a movie this bad.
Right.
Anyway. Yes.
So let's discuss George R.R. Martin and how he may not finish his epic series of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yes.
And how that apparently has pissed off a lot of people.
And now there may be one or two people on Earth who don't know this. Song of Ice and Fire are the book series on which Game of Thrones is based.
Right.
George R. R. Martin.
Game of Thrones is the first book in that series which the show is based on.
And they correctly didn't call the series A Song of Ice and Fire because it's not as catchy as a title.
Yeah.
And, I feel one of my favorite shows right now is The Expanse. And I really think they should have done the same thing as Game of Thrones and called it after the first book, which is called Leviathan Wakes, which is an
that sounds much more
infinitely better title. I think people see The Expanse and they're like, The Expanse? What is that? Leviathan Wakes is a way catchier title.
But look, after season 1, people are going to wonder, well, why are we still calling it Leviathan Wakes when the titular Leviathan is well awoken? And is currently not only awake, but enjoying their brunch.
Yeah, the second volume. It's the second volume is called Leviathan Gets Some Coffee. Leviathan has a shower, brushes his teeth.
Season 2, Leviathan's Latte.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I always had. There used to be a website in read George R. R. Martin. So when the show started. He had written, when the show was announced, he'd written 4 books.
Right.
And the 4th book was controversial because he had said he'd finished the book, then he released what turned out to be half a book, which was A Feast for Crows. And, it was, only the books are based around the viewpoints of certain characters.
Right.
Tyrion's, Jon, Dany, Arya, Sansa, and 1 or 2 others. Theon. They're the main. And they do sometimes come and go as characters. But essentially, you had 8 or 9 characters who were the viewpoint characters. And anyway, the 4th book only contained about half the regular viewpoint characters. It didn't have.
That's still more than any book rightfully should have for viewpoint characters.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's just the structure that he was employing, was that he kept flipping between viewpoint characters, which, as far as it goes. Anyway, so he released that, and then he had told people that the book was totally finished and he was just editing it. And then something like 5 years went by with only this theoretically half a book coming out. Finally, the show was announced, and very shortly after the show was announced, I believe, the 5th book was finally finished and released. There are supposed to be 2 more books in the series, and the show is now past where the books ended. The final 2 books supposedly are going to be called The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. He says he's on it. The ironic thing is now, because of the success of the show, George R. R. Martin has gotten all these other writing gigs, which are taking away from his ability to write Game of Thrones books.
Right.
Now,
and he's also not writing for the show anymore because he initially was helping to write the show initially.
Yeah, which was too bad. I thought he actually wrote a couple of the best episodes early on. Because he was from TV. He wrote for the Beauty and the Beast show back in the 80s with Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he was the head writer, but he was certainly one of the writers. And he worked on the 80s Twilight Zone revival, which existed, if you may or may not recall.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah. And he worked on some other stuff that never got picked up. But he always wanted to do all kinds of cool fantasy shit on TV, which you couldn't do either because of budget or he just couldn't, get people to give him a go. So that's part of why he wrote Game of Thrones, is because he kind of went, I'd like to do a big ongoing TV show that you would never be able to do because you wouldn't have the budget. Of course, this was in 1996. And then now, of course, they went ahead and did it as a TV show.
Well, then Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings happened, and so fantasy came much more into vogue again compared to the previous decades.
The title is J.R.R. Martin Might Never Finish A Song of Ice and Fire.
All right.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And this is from BarnesandNoble.com. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Now, I actually do kind of want to mention there used to be a website called Finish the Book George, which was basically trolling George R. Martin. And was very, grumpy and grouchy and telling him, George, and it was like, Game of Thrones sucks, it's terrible. They were obviously the world's biggest fan of the books, but now they're saying it's terrible because it wasn't finished. Somehow that made it bad, retroactively. It was kind of witty, and you could kind of see where it was coming from at the time, but it was so entitled. It was so why are you wasting your time with this? And apparently the fans of the books felt really burned, because more than anything he would say, it was finished, and then it would be finished, that kind of thing. So he did, unfortunately, could be seen as stringing people along at the time.
Why I picked this for clickbait is that it seems to frame it as George R. Martin said, well, I'm considering just fucking off and not bothering, when he hasn't given any indication by that.
Yeah.
I mean, what were his exact words? What did he say specifically? I'm just scrolling through the article to see.
There's no exact quote from him that's the start of it. It's just, reflecting on the fact that he's an older man and has 2 more books to write.
Yeah.
And they're big books, and he may not finish them.
So, and I think that's something to keep in mind for a lot of people, is that, sometimes things just don't get finished because they don't get finished. You can't help it.
Yes.
And this is coming from being a manga reader who started reading and watched Nana, and I don't think that series will ever get finished because the creator got sick, so she had to stop.
Right.
And I don't think she's picked it up since then, and I have no idea what her health status is. So she might never finish that series, which really
Game of
sucks.
Thrones fans have no sympathy from me, because I never got season 3 of Carnival.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of HBO, I would like to point out we are finally getting, quote, season 4 of Deadwood. So that is fun. And we did get season 3 of Twin Peaks. So never say nevering. It could happen.
Right. It's not that it could never happen. It's just people need to keep in mind that sometimes, closure is nice, but you might not get it, especially for a lot of these series. The fact that we actually got the end of the Harry Potter series is kind of amazing. Although now it's being stretched for all it's worth, and it's horrible.
Now they're forgetting that they finished it. Well, I know that the other big one, and this is apparently in the works as a big fantasy TV series as well, the Wheel of Time series, which I was never a huge fan of, but I found out a lot of my pals like it a lot. Of course, I
was friends with somebody who really loved it.
Yeah, he now the writer Robert Jordan, not his real name apparently, he actually died without it being finished properly, and it
happens.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. Now, the criticism was that
there's no reason not to finish the book just because you died. Tupac keeps releasing albums, so.
Yep.
Somehow Tupac keeps releasing albums. Who knows how?
From beyond, he saved up a whole bunch of them. Yep. There's a series by Isaac Asimov called the Foundation series where the main guy. Sorry, this seems like a huge diversion, but I am going somewhere with this. I promise. The main guy is a scientist who predicts what the history is going to be like. So he records a whole ton of recordings for like multiple future generations, and they keep playing them every 50 to 100 years of what he's predicted is going to happen. And whenever I see that, I always think of that when I see like the Tupac's still releasing stuff, when they're still releasing albums from like Elvis and
Tupac
and Kurt
releases
Cobain.
his most dire prophecy yet.
Oh my god.
It was Nostradamus's prophecies.
The prophecies of
The
Tupac.
pack
Oh,
of
God.
two will be released.
You know, and it's weird because I can actually imagine Tupac doing that, and it makes sense for why Biggie didn't, because I can imagine somehow because of their different personalities, Biggie wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
but Tupac would. That's really weird, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, but just going back to Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan. So they did.
Yeah, who is mentioned in the article?
He did mention. Well, that's the thing. It had to be finished by another writer, Brendan Sanderson, who apparently knocked it out of the park. I haven't read it. I was not I was not a huge fan, but of the books. But people were like gushing over the books that he did to write the series, because it was basically a fan taking over his beloved series. Now, the criticism of Robert Jordan before he died was that, of course, you can't help that he died, but he did seem to be stretching it out beyond reason. Like, he could have wrapped it up in 7 books, and he kept it going to like 12 books, basically.
Yeah, it says it's an 11-book saga.
Yeah.
So
I think it ended up being 14. He wrote 11 books. Yeah. He wrote 11 books, and then Brendan Sanderson wrote 3 to finish it.
okay.
And so 11 are by the originals, 3 are by by Brendan Sanderson.
I know you're saying Sanderson, but every time I hear it, I keep hearing that it was written by Bernie Sanders.
So there's this king, right? He's the dragon reborn. He's got to be reborn. It's great. Anyway, so there is a reasonable criticism people have made about George Martin, because if you've read his blog, and I was reading his blog for a while because I was excited just the 5th. I was lucky enough to get into it just on the verge of the 5th book and then the TV show. So like for me, there was no sitting and waiting for years. It was like I heard about it, then a year later a new book came out, and then there was a show, and I was like, hey, cool, I get what I want. But now it's been the length of the show, and he still hasn't produced the next book. Now, to be fair, so this is the back and forth. Part of it is, well, he is not obligated, and this is what the article is pointing out. He's not really obligated. He's not your dancing monkey. But at the same time, if you read about what he's doing, he is kind of wasting his time and not working on it. Like, not even trying to work on it. And there's a certain point where he's probably made so much money off it and done so well, and he's so comfortable that he doesn't have the impetus to actually finish it, and he might be, feeling weighed down by it. And I think some of the behavior of the quote fans unquote has been a little bit brutal. Like, they tend to say things like, hurry up and finish this before you die, you big fat. So it's like, who would read that and go, well, I better finish the book? That's the kind of thing that makes you want to go, just no, I don't want to deal with these people anymore. I don't want to write these books anymore because they're being jerks about it, And it's clear that it's like, we'll be happy when you die, but you have to finish the books first. It's like, well, great, that's really motivational. Thanks, I really care about that. And
only once the Song of Ice and Fire is completed, Batman, do you have my permission to die.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yep, that is 100% the attitude.
I mean, that's what a particular quote basically said. I'm just going to read it. When you buy my book, you're paying for me for work I already did. Time I chose to invest in the hopes that I would later be rewarded. Unless you want to pony up the salary/advance to buy a writer's time going forward, you don't get to decide what they are working on.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So if he has already received an advance for one of these or both of these books, then yeah, it does kind of seem unfair that he isn't working on them. But then again, it's the publisher who should actually be hounding him, not the fans.
It
should be the publisher being like, hey, we paid you this money for you to write this book.
Yeah.
Why haven't you written the book? That makes sense.
Yeah, you can reasonably say, well, he hasn't really acted very well, but the level to which it tips into entitlement is really gross. Oh yeah, really, really gross. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if it was just sort of a reasonable, hey, you kind of started this series and you promised more, and then you didn't finish it. What's going on? And meanwhile, you're blogging about you don't write during football season or whatever. He has all these things times that he doesn't write, apparently. And those
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's literally like, I don't write when I'm on the road. Well, that's fair enough. And like, I don't write when it's football season, apparently. So when it's football season, it's like that.
Which is an odd one to me, because as a non-football fan, it seems like it's always football season.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a long stretch of the year, for sure, to not be writing. So, or when his favorite team is in the playoffs. I guess when his team gets knocked out, he goes back to writing or whatever. And again, I mean, you can write... That's the thing. If he wasn't writing serialized fiction, he could write whenever the hell he wanted.
Basically.
I always think of Douglas Adams. He always said, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they go by. And he was notoriously... and he really had people going... For God's sake, Douglas, write another book because you'll make us $1 jillion and we need it. And his publishers were literally like trying all these tricks to get him to write. Stephen Fry wrote an introduction to one of his books. He was a friend of Douglas Adams. He said, I was always, they were always trying tricks to keep me from visiting Douglas because if I went over, he wouldn't get any writing done. So the publisher would go over there and like growl at me to get out of the house so that he could do some writing and stuff like that. But nobody was going, oh, there needs to be a new Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book. They were they did make some more, but it was basically finished. It didn't feel like it needed more. With Song of Ice and Fire, because it's very much to be continued, you're like, there's an implicit promise of more that people, get hung up on.
Well,
but then you can,
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk there, because in one sense, there's no obligation to finish it. On the other hand, when you pitch it as a series, I can understand people expecting it to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I can understand intentionally wanting to screw over these fans.
Yeah, at this point, you're kind of
like
these fans have become so obnoxious. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think people understand that the more you demand something, the less likely somebody's gonna want to make it for you, especially when, like, you have not actually put real investment in it. And granted, there's a certain thing about being invested as a fan in terms of making fan work and supporting a thing, but if you haven't done a real investment, as the other person said, like actually paying them or putting in an advance for the thing, then yes, it's pure entitlement, and there's no reason to act that way.
I remember, I remember when the Watchmen movie was on its, like, it was just a gleam in everyone's eye. The fans were like, they were getting, and Alan Moore was like, I don't really want it to be a movie, and people were like, well, he owes us a movie. It's our right to get him. Like, I literally had an argument with someone who was like, well, by Moore saying that, it makes the movie less likely, and he's denying us the chance of a great movie. And I'm like, well, it's his work. He literally didn't want a movie in this case, but it was like, no, like, it was just taken as a given that they had a right to a movie eventually. And sure, I mean, I always thought it could have made a good movie, and instead we got what we got. But
Well, it's also important that, like, there's like almost 20 years of movie development for Watchmen as well. Like, it wasn't something that was done in like a very short time frame, and that, like, there's a big old flow chart of like all of the different cast choices during the span of time. Like, at one point Robin Williams was selected to be Rorschach, which I think is absolutely insane.
What?
Like, he would have done it. He would have been amazing at it. I don't deny that, but like,
okay, no, stop.
The logic there at all.
No, 1 second, because I can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
But here's the question.
I can see why that would make sense.
Would we get comedian Robin Williams, or would we get actually dramatic character actor Robin Williams?
Right.
I think we would get dramatic character Robin Williams, because Robin Williams does do a decent amount of thought when it comes to every single character he plays, regardless if it's dramatic or comedic.
Yes.
Like, he is very calculated regardless of which one he does. So if he did actually get the part of Rorschach, I can actually see him doing it very, very well, because he would understand that because his face is covered, that his body would actually be the main point of
also
expression.
He can go...
And that's also really hard to do.
Also, he can go dark.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
it's not as though he would be a bad choice for Rorschach, it's just a very odd choice.
But to me, the problem with casting a well-known celebrity as Rorschach, if you think about it, the problem is that with Rorschach, it means there'd be a celebrity character walking around in the background for the first half of the movie before you find out that he's Rorschach. It kind of spoils the twist there.
Yeah,
that
a little
doesn't make
bit.
any sense.
Unless they put him under a
Holy
pseudonym.
fuck! How good would that have been? Just people watching of people like going to this movie and like for the first third of it. The fuck is that? Robin Williams in the background holding as the crazy like street preacher, as the guy holding the end is near.
Yeah.
Is that just fucking Rob? Did they just leave the door to the set unlock and he wander in? Where the fuck is Robin Williams here? He's not saying anything. No one's drawing attention to him.
And it would be like an entertaining cameo, but then he'd keep appearing multiple times in the movie.
Yeah. It would be great. It would be awesome.
But yes, it is one of those things where I can kind of see both sides with George R. R. Martin. But at the end of the day, it's true. He does not owe us his life. But on the other side, and he's doing well. He's making a lot of money off Game of Thrones. Like he's not sitting there struggling like chained to a typewriter going, I must make rent this month. So you do kind of go, okay, George, you know, take 6 months, finish the next damn book. You've got to have, because he literally said, I've got like 300 pages that I had to cut from the last book and transfer over to the next book. And, you know, anyway, so it's that kind of thing. It's clearly not something that he feels enthusiastic about anymore. It's fine.
All right. What are we moving on to next?
I think
is it? Okay.
Yeah, we should do the last one that you guys have, that you planned.
All right, so the last one is tomorrow's the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And this will actually be kind of a big deal because for the first time they have a new balloon in it. It's gonna be...
Wait, no, stop, because there have been new balloons before, so this cannot be the first time they've had a new balloon.
No, they've had new balloons before, but this is the first time they've had, like, a prominent anime character in it. I think they've had Pikachu in the past.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
they've had Pikachu.
But arguably, that's also because of video games. But this is the first time they're gonna have Goku! So it's kind of a big deal, especially to a lot of anime fans, because we've never had a purely anime character in the Macy's Day.
Why now?
As far as I am aware.
Why this year of all years? Is there something about Dragon Ball that's happened this year that's really exciting?
The most recent season series has been a pretty big deal for a lot of people.
Okay.
Especially if you're into Dragon Ball. So
right.
There's that.
Which I am not, but
yes.
Yeah.
It's had another anime series that's doing very well. It's getting a bit of a resurgence.
And they've been promoting the hell out of it, as Vampire Kyoto said in the chat. So, like, basically, the tweet that I posted to you guys is specifically from the Dragon Ball Super account, which is the current season, and it's an official account. I saw posts from Viz, and Funimation, which both handle the manga and anime of the series, and then Crunchyroll also reposted the same thing. And they are one of the main platforms that distributes the anime to English-speaking audiences.
And we entirely selected the story so that we could have Adam ask, what's a Goku?
What's a Goku?
What is a Goku?
What's a Goku?
Technically speaking, it's a mythical character from China who's half monkey, monkey, can transform into a monkey, depending on which version we're talking about.
If it's Journey into the West, it's Sun Wukong, which is the monkey.
Right.
The monkey demon / monkey king.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that have to do with Goku and Dragon Ball Z, then?
Okay, so fun story.
Was based off of. That's what the original series was based off of. That's where Son Goku gets his name.
Yeah, originally it was a weird kind of anime sci-fi adaptation of Journey into the West, except then it kept going.
Yeah, it was so popular that the editors editors of Shonen Jump were like, "Hey, we need you to keep writing this." And Toriyama was like, "Okay, I'll keep writing it." So he kept writing it.
It went on
kind of like J.R. Martin.
It went on for so long. He went all the way around, and it was in the East instead of the West.
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean, it's like if you had 10 Commandments, and then rather than okay, led the Hebrews out of Egypt, it just kept going, and then Charlton Heston fights Space Hitler. And finds his long-lost brother, who reveals that, he's actually an alien.
Okay. And that there's a bunch of other people like him who also have tails and randomly transform into giant monkey monsters.
Or, for the sake of my allegory, just a whole alien species of people who can talk to God and part water. And then, he has to fight his brother, and then he has to fight the monarch of the remnants of these people, because their planet was blown up by Space Hitler, and then they have to fight Space Hitler, and then they have to fight a Frankenstein monster, and then they have to fight a Kirby.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They do literally have to fight a Kirby, don't they?
Yeah.
And I guess since Piccolo is based off of Satan, even though there was actually a character named Mr. Satan.
Also,
that's Mr. Satan to you.
No, we also have to clarify, Mr. Satan is not a bad guy.
Yeah, Mr. Satan is not a bad guy. He's just a character named
Mr. Satan is a friendly ally.
The actual Satan... Yeah, the actual Satan/devil allegory is a character named Piccolo, who turns out to be the best father that Goku's son has ever had.
Okay, Adam.
Ouch.
So in
Ouch,
so we need to give this explanation. So in Dragon Ball, God is an alien.
Okay.
Who came to Earth for reasons that I don't remember, but because he was at some point not worthy, he underwent some ritual to split himself into his evil and good halves, thus becoming the devil and God, respectively.
Okay.
God is also a job. There have been gods beforehand, and then when this god dies in the series, somebody else of his species takes over as God.
Okay.
Oh, and also the devil was killed, but he reproduced asexually via vomiting an egg.
What?
Yep. Yeah.
What is wrong with anime?
Yeah.
Who is his son?
Piccolo?
Who is his... Yes, so thus there is... the devil's name was Piccolo, and thus Piccolo's son, Piccolo Jr., is his offspring via asexual reproduction, and also his reincarnation.
Well, Homer Simpson voice. I can see why this is so popular.
The best part is that that's just how that's just how Piccolo's people do. In fact, reproduce. They don't. They have a gender, one gender.
They have one gender, and it's
Mr.
slug.
Yeah, basically, and he's probably one of the most, if not the most popular character in the series.
Oh, also then it
wait,
of
Piccolo
course,
or
then
Mr. Satan?
Honestly, both,
Piccolo.
but Piccolo is the favorite, and because
Piccolo in particular.
So I have to clarify, both the person named Mr. Satan and the person who previously held the title of the Devil/Satan, neither are antagonists in the series.
Well,
I mean, Piccolo starts out as one, but Piccolo has spent far more time as a protagonist than an antagonist.
Yeah, and as I said, as it turns out, Goku eventually gets married and has a kid, and then that kid decides, you know who should train me to fight because my dad isn't going to train me to fight? The guy that my dad beat up. So I'm going to go over to Piccolo and ask him to train me to fight.
Okay, well, I guess that's a logical... Oh, that's that guy. I've seen that guy. I haven't seen him barfing eggs, but I have seen this green dude with the little antenna. I guess I guess One Punch Man is making fun of this a lot, right?
Yeah.
Or am I completely
One Punch Man makes fun of all other action anime.
Okay.
Yeah, it specifically goes after a lot of tropes found in shonen anime in particular. Mostly because a lot of shonen anime takes its cues from Dragon Ball and its various series.
Dragon Ball took its cues from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so that's the pedigree of this madness.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay,
basically.
so to clarify, since I have to explain Mr. Satan more fully, Mr.
Clarify
Satan,
a lot.
Mr. Satan is effectively a pro wrestler. In
Yeah.
that everybody thinks he's a real martial artist, but his stuff is entirely, like, performance and show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so he is, like, a buffoon who cannot actually fight. That's his thing. And he is based on, at least visually, on somebody who, this was a real person called Count Dante.
Yes, I know Count Dante.
Yes, who I was gonna say, I think since you're reading the pulp stuff for This Mad World,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
that you might have come across his ads.
I know him in comics. Yes, he used to advertise in
Yes.
the back of comics. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, again, and he was a famous fake martial artist who sold his training things, and you can kind of see where, from the view of the Japanese thing, getting the name of Count Dante to Mr. Satan.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but I can kind of see what they were doing.
He's well enough known in Japan that they were
Yes!
like, oh yes, a parody of Count Dante.
You
Yes!
you would be surprised what gets over to Japan. Like,
Billy
so-
Banks,
so
for
our
some
boy
reason, is
Vampiric
very
Yoda-
popular in Japan.
Okay.
So our boy Vampiric Yoda posted a set of panels from the manga which shows Space Hitler, Frieza, training the way that Rocky did in the
Yes!
Rocky movies. He doesn't punch meat, however, but you do see him with a punching bag. So the fact that they didn't put Frieza in a freezer is very disappointing to me.
No, the actual... Yeah, pretty much the thing there is that he did... like 3 other arcs beyond when he wanted to stop. Because...
Because he wanted to stop with the Frieza
Yeah.
arc. Like, that was a pretty definitive arc. Like, the end of that is pretty definitive for a lot of people just because of all of the shit that happened, but then it kind of kept going because, again, the people at Shonen Jump were like, this is popular, keep going.
This is gold! More of
So-
these Satans! We need more
We need
various
allegories for the
Satans!
devil. We need more allegories for the devil.
Okay.
Okay.
Not enough Satans.
What do I do? I know.
Too many
I'll think of a
Satans.
weird pink alien thing that eats people and absorbs their powers. Yeah.
Okay, so basically what we've established is that they're making a Goku balloon. So this is the thing.
Yes, so
Does
you
that
can
mean-
see why this was granted a Macy's Day balloon!
Now, does this mean you can buy your way into the Macy's Day Parade? Like, you're just like, we're promoting our big thing, so we're going to make a balloon for the Macy's Day Parade? Or what? Did they just...
Honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if money was a factor in terms of, like, what gets in, and it is quite possible that Toei or I forget the company that owns Shonen Jump, but it's possible that, like, they made a pitch and were like, this is a pop culture phenomenon that's been around since the 90s.
Right.
It kind of deserves to be in the Macy's Day Parade.
I have absolutely no
So-
issues. I can completely agree with that. Like, that it's worth being in
Yeah.
the Macy's Day Parade. It's just weird, like, who decides? Is there a blue ribbon panel of Macy's Day Parade balloon judges who go, I think it is time? Is it like the Lifetime Achievement Oscar? Do they go, okay, now it is time. Goku may be in there.
You're not ready yet, kid!
Come back in 20 years. If I'm still here, if you can beat me.
Well, I also think part of the factor is that, like, they also have to make sure that whatever they're putting in there is relevant to the people who would be watching.
Yeah.
So it is also quite possible that, like, for years they've had stuff that wasn't relevant. I know a couple years ago, one of the reasons why a lot of people watched the Macy's Day Parade was because the Cartoon Network float rickrolled everybody who was watching, and that was a major deal. So, like trying to stay relevant, I think, is also part of it. And it's just like, well, this is one of the biggest pop culture things since ever. We might as well let them do it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, sure, absolutely. And of course, like, I'm not that familiar with the Macy's Day Parade, but that, you know, the Simpsons episode where they joke about how everything's from, like, Funky Winkerbean and the Noid and things that aren't relevant at all.
Yeah.
And
because I think they always do Snoopy, and like it's not that Snoopy is irrelevant.
No.
It's just that like I don't know how many kids are still reading Peanuts comics.
I love Peanuts,
these
but the
days.
fact that it's such a zombie pop culture property
Yeah.
that just keeps going. But Canada's Wonderland up in Canada, it used to be heavily brand. It's a theme park, and it used to have all these brands and all these characters that were, you know, it would have like the Lara Croft Tomb Raider ride and all this stuff. It lost basically all the brands, but it still has Peanuts. It still has Snoopy and Charlie Brown in one corner of the park. And that just shows you how desperate they were to brand everything with Peanuts.
Yeah, you need to stay relevant in some capacity, and if having apparently one version of Super Saiyan Goku floating up in the air next to Snoopy is the way to do it, then so be it.
Is the Macy's Day Parade still like really popular? Do people really watch it every year and stuff? Or is it kind of
It's a Thanksgiving tradition for a lot of people. I don't know if people are actively watching it.
Right.
That's the only thing, because like I know I've just put it on as we're like making Thanksgiving for the day, and it's not something we're like really actively watching. But that could also just be my family. So
right, yeah, that's the impression I get. It's one of those things people put on in the background, and the football game too. Except people watch the football game because they care about the football game, the Super Bowl or whatever. Not the Super Bowl.
Not
the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl's in like what, February? Again, this is me not knowing anything about sports.
Yeah, I don't know like why exactly, but the football game played on Thanksgiving is it's a big deal.
We should wrap it up, but I did want to ask, what do you think the PSI is on the filling of that Goku balloon? Do you think it's over 9,000?
There we go. I'm sorry, it was frankly foolish of me to even ask if it was a thing.
I had to do it.
No.
That's the only Dragon Ball thing I know. Anyway, okay, let's put a pin on that. That's it for the evening, I believe, right? So, unless you had
that's it. We're trying to end these on a high note.
Yes. Well, that was a pretty high note that I delivered. Yes. Well, let's roll off into the highly pixelated sunset. Just a reminder to check our Patreons because we are all weekly. That too, but you should check our Patreons, which we will link to below. And that the show is going to be weekly from now on. And this has been for a while, but it will continue to be weekly. Ing actually mentioned my other podcast, which is called What Mad Universe, which you can check out at the Never Sleeps Network. So I'll plug that just because it's available. Anyway, so we're wrapping it up for the evening, folks. So sleep well. We'll see you next year because weeks feel like years now, as we've established from the last show. And so anyway, all right, have a good night, folks. Bye.